Well, guys, we are back for another episode of the Liberal Asshole Show. Episode 37 is we're once again doing back-to-back weeks. So now, let's get today's topics, which are they? Because a few of them were left off from the last episode.
Anyway, Kyle's Ukraine crisis video, TLDR's Ukraine video, Biden honestly, Candice Owens menstruating, ill, Pelosi running and lying, defining what views are Shitlib views and what views are Doreknob views, Brian Flores Nfl lawsuit, and protectionism 1, abortion-free trade is 0.
Alright, so what do you want to talk about first?
Let's get on to the Ukraine videos first.
Okay, so I think I think it would probably make sense to watch Kyle's first. So this is several of the videos that we were going to cover last week, but we didn't get around to because we didn't have enough time. So first off, here was Kyle's video from
it seems
2 weeks ago now about the Ukraine crisis.
So
and he also got a whole bunch of shit for this too. Even Vosh ripped him a new asshole, remember?
It seems like a ridiculous thing to say at face value, but perhaps it's not so ridiculous when you look at the facts. We're playing with fire here, man. That doomsday clock is not in a good place. We are
bad internet connection
on the brink of World War III, which would be obviously game, set, match on human civilization, because in the nuclear age, you can't have a World War III. It doesn't work like that. When you have nuclear weapons, two nuclear-armed powers going at it, to say it's a problem is an understatement. So Russia, China, and Iran are basically prepping and doing like World War III war games. And the situation currently unfolding between Russia and Ukraine is devastatingly scary. So I want to go ahead and throw it now to, this is a video from a German public broadcaster, and they're going to give you some of the information.
America's top diplomat, Antony Blinken, is in Geneva to meet with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov for make-or-break talks that could determine war or peace in Europe. On Thursday, Blinken was in Berlin, where he held talks with German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock and their British and French counterparts, a meeting meant to show a united front and clear up any misunderstanding about Western unity regarding Russian aggression against Ukraine.
The stakes are high. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken landing in Berlin to try and rally America's allies and prevent a war. Unity is the main goal here. Blinken and his German, French and British counterparts discussed the intense fears that Russia may soon invade Ukraine. Their focus, how to credibly deter Moscow, with warnings of what could follow.
Even as we're relentless in pursuing this diplomatic path, we'll continue to make very clear that if Moscow chooses the path of further aggression, we will impose swift and massive costs.
We urgently call on Russia to take steps towards de-escalation. Any further aggression would have serious consequences.
But comments by the US President a day earlier have raised questions about whether those consequences really do apply to any act of aggression.
Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc. But if they actually do what they're capable of doing with the force amassed on the border, it is going to be a disaster for Russia.
The White House later tried to clarify, insisting that the West would react, come what may. But the issue has highlighted questions over what level of aggression would trigger what kind of response. The US has made it clear that it would expect Berlin to target the controversial Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which links Germany to Russian gas.
It's also worth noting that gas is not flowing through Nord Stream 2 yet, which means that the pipeline is leverage for Germany, the United States, and our allies, not Russia.
For now, though, there's another round of diplomacy coming up. Antony Blinken will meet his Russian counterpart in Geneva on Friday, seen as one of the last chances to find a way of avoiding war.
So the good news is that they're talking, and according to Anthony Blinken, the talks are direct and open and businesslike, and nobody's playing hide the ball. But at the same time, both sides are kind of playing hide the ball in a different sense because as Russia is insisting, look, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to go into Ukraine. They've amassed, I read, up to 100,000 troops on the border. And on the U.S. side, we say, well, I don't know what you're talking about. We're not we're not interested in a conflict either, but we are sending weapons on top of weapons on top of weapons into Ukraine as well, and also into some of the surrounding post-Soviet states. So, and by the way, these things are viewed from both sides as red lines. So, like, the West doesn't want Russia to put any troops on the border, of course. And Vladimir Putin and the Russians don't want the U.S. to send weapons into states bordering Russia. I mean, how would we feel if Russia set up a bunch of missiles in Cuba? Seems like something like that may have happened at some point in history, and we reacted in not such a great way. Tensions were so high, and we're lucky we escaped without an absolute cataclysm. How would we feel if Russia was funneling weapons into Mexico, and Mexico was an enemy state of ours? I don't think we'd like that very much. So, in order to understand this conflict, you have to understand the history of the region, because a lot of people, I mean, literally every mainstream media pundit, and of course every right-wing commentator, none of them will give you the history of what led to this. They just talk about it as if, usually the default assumption is like Vladimir Putin is Hitler and he's trying to take over, every area under the sun, and he has world domination goals, and so, anything we do to try to deter that is just and moral and righteous and virtuous. That seems to be the prevailing underlying narrative and assumption when people talk about this, but it really is not that simple. And it shouldn't surprise you guys in my audience to know that it's not that simple. So, in an article in the New York Times, and credit to the New York Times for putting this line in there, although I will say there's an article that came out 2 or 3 days ago, and this line was way deep in the article, but nonetheless it's there. So they say, quote, Russia's demands include a legally binding halt to NATO's eastward expansion and a withdrawal of NATO troops from countries like Poland and Baltic nations that used to be aligned with or part of the Soviet Union. The United States has dismissed those demands as non-starters, even as American officials offered talks on other matters, such as military exercises and the placement of missiles. Okay, so now also Biden is talking about, he's reviewing plans to send anywhere from 1,000 troops to 5,000 troops, U.S. troops, boots on the ground in the area near Russia's border. Okay, this is getting beyond crazy. And reckless and dangerous, of course. So, here's what happened. When the Soviet Union broke up, in other words, when the West won the Cold War, we gave our word to Russia. Look, we're not going to expand NATO any closer to your border. That was part of the post-Soviet Union deal when we broke up the Soviet Union and created all of the post-Soviet states. And ever since we gave them our word on that, we've gone back on our word. And in fact, NATO has crept closer and closer and closer to Russia's border. Now, from the Russian perspective...
Now, I've heard, conflicting things on that. Foch is, really went after Kyle for this. That, oh, no, we actually didn't agree to that. And all the NATO people also say the same thing. But I've also seen conflicted things that actually they did. So, I don't know how true it is. But here's the thing. Regardless if it's true or not, Russia did feel like it was implied to them that NATO was not going to expand beyond Germany. And you can't just ignore that.
Perspective...
Yeah.
This is an act of aggression.
Carl says there's a lot of people on the right who are like, rah, rah, and then there are a lot of people on factions of the left who are like, because America has 800 military bases around the world, that means that basically Russia and China could do whatever the fuck they want, and we're not allowed to respond. Because it's only imperialism when the West does it.
Yep.
And again, it's not too hard to figure out why. If we had Russia with weapons in Cuba or Mexico or Canada, and those states were nominally either neutral or aligned with them, we would view that as a provocation. So that's the Russian perspective on this. Hey, NATO, get the hell off our border. Stop, effectively threatening us here. And you can see where they're coming from, because it's not like the U.S. actually abides by international law and doesn't act in a thuggish way globally. In fact, this is a point that Putin has made repeatedly over the years. The U.S. has 900 military bases around the world. We fund 73% of the world's dictatorships. We effectively have puppet governments that are aligned with us in 73% of the world's dictatorships. We're expansionist. We ignored international law in Iraq and in Afghanistan and with the 8 countries that we're currently bombing. And so for us to say, hey, look, you got to abide by international law, but then we violate it on a Tuesday before brunch, that's beyond hypocritical, and your word has no weight when you act like that. Now, the perspective from the
that's also where a lot of lefties go on to say that that's why Russia and China should be allowed to do whatever the fuck they want. Yeah. Because we've got 900 military bases, support 73% of the world's dictatorships.
Yep, and
US and expansionists, breaking international law by existing, things like that.
Yep, I don't know if
I think go on. Personally, too far the other way. Like, basically, you might as well be like, all right, you're right. America, we're now completely isolationist. We're literally not going to intervene anywhere. Do anything.
Yeah, I don't know if Kyle brings up, I'll bring it up here. It is true that NATO is a threat to Russia on their border. But likewise, I also have to point out, too, why did Eastern Europe join NATO after the Cold War ended? Just like you view NATO as a threat, Eastern Europe and all them, they view you as a threat. It's mutual threats. Like, you gotta also consider that, too. Your
friend. They also be kind of the case with Taiwan. So even if they're still technically part of China, because they're the where the Chinese nationalists ran to after they lost to Mao. But Taiwan, like, long before, basically say, yeah, China can completely subsume Taiwan into China instead of just having it as an autonomous region. That's what I was thinking. Taiwan is an autonomous region in China. That's right. Just remember that.
Vladimir Putin basically wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union, or maybe even go beyond that and like take over all of Europe. And, you would see there are people deranged enough to make Hitler analogies and comparisons. Like, that's really his ultimate goal, is to take over all of Europe, perhaps all of the world. I think that's really hyperbolic. But now we're stuck here in a standoff. Now, in his heart of hearts, does Vladimir Putin probably want to reconstitute the Soviet Union? I think that's probably true. But I also think it's true that he understands that that's not politically viable or feasible, given the strength and power of NATO, and you can't do that without World War III. However, we saw a similar thing happen when Russia invaded Georgia. I think that was under George W. Bush. Georgia, not U.S.'s Georgia, Georgia the country. And of course we saw with Crimea in, I believe it was 2014 under Barack Obama. And what happened is Vladimir Putin went into Crimea and effectively said, well, this is ours now. And it is true, this is a part that's, kind of buried in Western media. It is true that the area that he took over, regardless of what you think of what he did there, the area that he took over is basically ethnically Russian. And then
and polls also show that they wanted to be with Russia instead of Ukraine.
And you ask the people.
That's something a lot of people refuse to acknowledge too.
In the area that they took over, something like over 70% of.
It's like, I might have seen the argument where Russia should be only want to take the Russian parts of Ukraine if they were only having troops on the border between Russia and Ukraine, and they didn't start sending troops into Belarus. to the border with Ukraine.
One of them said they would prefer to be with Russia because Ukraine, like a lot of the post-Soviet states, are kind of fake states, and there's all these disparate factions.
That was another thing too. Kyle got shit for saying fake states.
Yeah.
They're not real. They're not fake. They've been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. They've just been occupied by Russia and other countries. Those cultures have been around for centuries. Hell, that's where Russia originated from. The Ukraine area, for crying out loud, if you don't know that.
Interesting.
Yeah, the Kievan Rus. So yeah, these cultures have been around, and the countries themselves have been around for a long time too. Like Ukraine existed right for like a few short years between World War II when the Russian Revolution happened before the Soviet Union took back over. And those countries did actually exist. They were just part of the Soviet Union. So it was like a country within a union, remember? And that's why I think they in Belarus actually got UN membership at the end of World War II to try and get the Soviet Union to join it. So yeah, they do exist, and their cultures have been around for centuries.
Regionalized regions that don't have a sort of national unity, and what we're talking about now with the part of Ukraine that Vladimir Putin looks poised to take over, it's a similar situation. And in the case of Crimea, he did it because the Russians needed access to a critical port that was there that, they view it as, well, if Ukraine aligns with the West and you have like American warships in this port that's right here by our doorstep, that is beyond an act of aggression. That's, almost close to an act of war.
Yeah, we actually talked about this before. When Ukraine,
that's when Britain tried to start World War III with Russia.
Yeah, we talked about this before. Crimea, for centuries, be it when it was part of the Russian Empire, and then when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, Russia used it as a naval base for their ships in the Black Sea. Because remember, Russia is limited to what they could do navally. Like the Black Sea is like really the only thing they have to use. And then when the Soviet Union broke up, Ukraine was still able to keep Crimea, but they had an agreement where Russia would still have their naval bases there. And Russia was afraid that if Ukraine went to the west, that deal would be reneged. And that's why another reason why they took Crimea, because if they don't and lose that access, they're basically crippled navally. And that's like too far for them.
It has us boxed in totally and completely, and they fear that the West wants to topple their government and wants to meddle in their affairs. So
it's for because he's again he wants to use because he's a member of the CIA. Half joking. Vosh wants the West to turn every government into a pro-Western government, and that method for the West taking over the world.
And remember, he wanted the CIA to assassinate Putin.
Yep.
Fucking dumbass.
Messy situation, and what you have
would fucking assassinate Biden or Chancellor of Germany in retaliation.
Is both sides are claiming that they're acting purely defensively. Russia claims they're acting purely defensively because NATO has encroached closer and closer to their border. And by the way, under Donald Trump, a lot of people don't know this, but under Donald Trump, he acted in a very aggressive way towards Russia, despite all the Russiagate propaganda. There was a NATO buildup on Putin's border under Donald Trump. They viewed that as an act of aggression. It was Donald Trump who rejected the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. By the way, that's a pipeline that Biden effectively approved. I mean, I agree with Biden on that because he says, look, hands off, this has nothing to do with me. It's an issue between Germany and Russia, and if Germany wants a Russian pipeline going into them, sure, I might not like it as the American president. I want you to buy our natural gas and not Russia's, but, Russia has it cheaper, and if you want to make a deal with them, well, who the hell are we to interfere? So Biden has effectively approved that pipeline, but now they're saying, look, we'll use it as leverage in this back and forth. And you have some psychotic neocon warhawks in the U.S. saying, well, now the round of sanctions that needs to be done is you cut Russia off from the entire global banking system. Okay, well, if you do that, then you're definitely asking for World War III because there definitely will be some sort of official hawkish response from Russia. And so Biden took a lot of shit for saying what he said.
And they will invade Ukraine. They will go in and finish off Georgia. They will annex Belarus. They will go into the Baltic states. If you do that, they will start World War III.
Said there, but I think he's being honest and open. Now, he's being honest and open, and maybe you shouldn't say it out loud, but he's still being honest and open when he says, look, it'll depend on the nature of the of what the incursion is. So it looks like Vladimir Putin is almost certainly going to go into Ukraine, but Biden's larger point there is, if you go into Ukraine and you take the area that's already kind of aligned with you and ethnically Russian and wants you there, well, that's one thing. We don't like it. It's bad, but that's one thing. But if you go into the ethnically Ukrainian areas, well, then we have a real problem, because they don't want Russia to take them over. And also, we've been arming rebel groups on the ground. By the way, this is a little-known fact, but a lot of the, and Trump armed these people too, a lot of the Ukrainian rebel groups that we're arming are neo-Nazis. I wish I was exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating. So it is a colossally messy situation, and a lot of people are commenting on this without giving the history of NATO. A lot of people are commenting on this without giving any credibility or credence to what Russia's perspective is. So I'm trying my best here to give both sides of the argument so you see where both of them are coming from. But the fact of the matter is, we can't afford this sort of hawkishness and rising of tensions. We can't afford it. It's the nuclear age. If there's some sort of miscommunication or one person steps out of line and goes too far, there can be absolutely devastating consequences. I mean, it's already a devastating situation, but it can get a hell of a lot worse. So I hope that cooler heads prevail. And listen, some neocon idiots might say I'm doing appeasement when I say this, but I don't think it's appeasement. I think that the simple demands of Russia on this front are reasonable, because all Russia wants is to go back to the original deal of NATO, which is you can't get further and further closer to our border. And NATO has been doing that. When NATO was launched...
Honestly, certain countries will be like, no, we are not leaving NATO.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I think what we talked about this in the last episode, I think, Russia wants NATO to go back to what it was pre-1997, which, the far as NATO went, was like Germany and Greece and Turkey, like none of Eastern Europe. Honestly, though, I think if we did that, I think Russia would be more likely to invade. What do you think?
I'm looking through here at the moment.
Like, I definitely
I don't think it'd happen. No, that's definitely not going to happen looking at the countries. The Baltic states, they absolutely would not want to leave.
Yep.
Because let's be honest, Russia would literally just stroll in. They wouldn't even charge in, but just stroll in and take those countries.
Yep.
There were only 12.
Is that kind of impossible because that one, Belarus is basically pretty much an autonomous region within Russia at this point. So we're kind of Russia pushing there. Who else? Plus, I don't know what we'd do with Poland in that regard.
12 countries in NATO. How many countries are in there now? 30. 30. So we said we're not going to expand closer to them, and then...
What?
We expand closer to them. And by the way...
I think they would... And plus Central Asia and the Caucasus.
There are 3 countries that currently want to get into...
Belarus, Ukraine, and Baltic states, and Georgia.
To NATO, Bosnia and I never knew how to pronounce this. Herzegovina, Georgia, and Ukraine. They're aspiring NATO members, but they're not in NATO. And so this notion that we're going to send American troops to fight and die and potentially start World War III over Ukraine, that's not something I agree with. That's not something I believe in. There was some preposterously high percentage of Americans that couldn't even put Ukraine out on a map in a story that just came out, and you're going to ask people to go fight and die for that? Now, the counter-argument is, yeah, but if you let Putin do this, then he's never going to stop. And I sincerely believe that that's bullshit in this sense. Not everybody's Hitler. Not everybody wants world domination. I don't think Vladimir Putin wants world domination or will try for world domination.
Neither do I, but I do think if he gets away with it, he won't stop, though.
I do think in Putin's heart of hearts, he wants to reconstitute the old Soviet Union, and I think that's unacceptable, and nobody would allow that to happen. But in terms of attempting to go back to the original deal when the Soviet Union was broken up and became Russia, I think that's a perfectly reasonable ask. So I'm going to read it to you one more time here. Russia's demands include a legally binding halt to NATO's eastward expansion.
And we're going to get to this in the next episode because they're going to talk about all the points that Russia made up, so we'll wait till then to talk about it.
We should do that. And withdrawal of NATO troops from countries like Poland and Baltic nations that used to be aligned with or part of the Soviet Union. I think that's reasonable. The United States has dismissed those demands as non-starters, even as American officials offer talks on other matters, such as military exercises and the placement of missiles. In other words, the U.S. is saying, look, we won't do like war games on your border anymore. Oh, how kind of you. You should have never been doing that in the first place. And we're not going to have like missiles pointed at you from very close to you. Okay, well, again, that's a tiny concession. It's a good concession. It's a tiny concession because that never.
I mean, I think like in terms of like nuclear weapons, I think the closest to Russia is like West Germany now. They used to be like in Italy and I know Turkey does have nuclear weapons still, but I don't think they're pointing at Russia.
It'd be Turkey first, then possibly Israel.
It should have been the case in the first place. Russia had missiles and fuel.
Get the capacity. Then next to Iran will be the first closest, and the second closest will be the third closest will be Saudi Arabia.
And others would be like, well, that's basically an act of war, and now we're on red alert, and we're about to assemble the forces to deploy. So I think that what they're asking for is legitimate and fair. I think you just have to go back to what the deal was when the Soviet Union was broken up, which is all of those post-Soviet buffer states need to be just that. They need to be buffer states. They need.
That's another thing too. Kyle got shit for saying that they're buffer states. I mean, guys, you might not like it, all of you that are in the areas that Kyle calls buffer states, but it's just a historical fact that you guys were, just like Western Europe was a buffer state for America for the Soviet Union. Like, both things are just true. You might not like it, but that's just a historical thing.
Austria like neutrality. That's it. I think that's all that Russia wants. And, Vladimir Putin, are there some ethnically Russian areas that he would effectively annex and try to make a part of Russia again? Yeah, and we know because he's already done that. Is that bad? Yes. Is that something to start World War III over? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because I think this mindset, this assumption, that he obviously has expansionist goals, and any deal with him is like Neville Chamberlain's deal with Hitler. I simply don't buy that. And generally speaking, the only people who buy that are people who don't have a historical understanding of the region. They don't understand the history of NATO, and people who tend to believe that the United States is always the good guy by default, always acting in the world's best interest by default. We're the world police, and the official bad nations are just a different breed, and they mean ill for everyone.
America bad and everyone else bad. That's how it's supposed to be.
That's my sense of it, is the people who don't think these are reasonable asks and don't want to comply with these asks are American exceptionalists, and they've drunk the Kool-Aid of the propaganda that all the bad nations are. If it wasn't for us keeping them in line, they would lead the world to chaos and devastation and dictatorship and totalitarianism, and they're the main problem, basically. I simply don't buy that. I think that's a childish argument. So look, I tried my best to give both sides of the story here. You can determine whether or not my breakdown is fair. You can determine what you think would ease this situation. But I really think the best thing that we could do is go back to the original deal when the Soviet Union was broken up. Go take NATO back to where it was in 1995 and just keep it there. And have the buffer states be buffer states, be neutral.
Sadly, I don't think that's going to fix anything,
in that situation, in other words, if we give into and agree to the reasonable acts of Russia, well, then we'll take it from there. And you know what? Hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe when we do that, if we do that, then Russia tries not only to take over ethnically Russian areas, which is one thing, but also goes further and actually tries to reconstitute the old Soviet Union by force. Well, in that instance, the second that he gets to a NATO country, all bets are off, and then you do have World War III. And in that instance, that wouldn't be the fault of America. That wouldn't be the fault of the West. That would
that's why the Baltic states, for example, want to be part of NATO, because I don't think Russia is going to try to do the Baltic states because they're part of NATO. So they know they're going to automatically be at war with NATO if they try to do the Baltic states. And that's why Ukraine wants to so badly be part of NATO.
Have goals that are too expansionist for peace. And if that's the case, that would be my commentary. But as of right now, that's not the case. And the asks, I think, are perfectly reasonable. And unfortunately, I don't think the West is gonna honor these asks, which are fair. And I think he's gonna go into Ukraine, but I think he's largely gonna go into just the ethnically Russian areas of Ukraine, which it's not a good thing that he's gonna do that, but he's gonna do that. And then you just have to hope that Joe Biden is as reasonable as Barack Obama was, and you don't start a war, and you don't engage in kind where we can have escalation to the point of absolute catastrophe. Because in the nuclear age, you can't have two nuclear armed powers in a hot war, because it's too dangerous, and we're all at risk if we do that. So you just have to hope that, because I do think since the West is not going to agree to the reasonable asks of, like, go back to original NATO and stop expanding towards our border. Since the West is not going to do that, I do think Vladimir Putin is going to go into Ukraine in the ethnically Russian areas, and I just hope Biden's smart enough not to escalate from there, because that would be devastating. But look, honestly, based on what Biden said there, it appears like his instinct is the same as mine, where he says, look, if it's just a little incursion, then, what are we going to do? Let's not start World War III over that. He said it. I just hope that the pressures behind the scenes from the deep state are not too impenetrable where he feels like he has to react in kind, which could make everything go out of control. So anyway, there you have the breakdown. I really hope cooler heads prevail. This is a dangerous situation for the world, and it's not getting as much talk and fair coverage as it needs. People are too busy talking about sexy M&Ms and whatnot, which I will do as well, but this is meat and potatoes. This is the more important stuff. And
if anything, it's being talked about a lot on YouTube from what I've seen.
It's a time to cross your fingers if you're superstitious, or even if you're not, and just hope that we can get through this. And
you still there?
The power of talking and honesty and negotiation.
You still there? So the video ended. So what do you have to say about what Kyle's video about?
I can see why he got statements that he did that was completely idiotic, but as well, come to the case with the factual Kyle's takes lately.
So like, I don't know if we ever talked about this yet, but what if Russia hypothetically did do something to Ukraine? What would you do?
I'm not sure. Definitely heavy sanctions.
Yes. I don't know about the SWIFT one though. That might be too much. But some sanctions definitely have to face some really bad ones.
Yes.
Because they can't just go in and just get away with it and do nothing.
No.
All right. So I think we should now go check out the TLDR video on what Putin's demands and what NATO wants, so we can get the really good detail on it. So let's get to it.
If you're interested in topics like this, we'll be covering
Shut up.
why they're, well, pretty demeaning, and whether they're best understood as a maximalist negotiating position or a pretext for invasion. On December the 17th, Russia published two separate draft texts, one for the United States and one for NATO, respectively named A Treaty Between the United States and Russian Federation on Security Guarantees and An Agreement on Measures to Ensure the Security of the Russian Federation and the Member States of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Let's start with the US one. The first few hundred words are pretty uncontroversial, stuff about respecting international law and maintaining peace and security. But Articles 3 through 7 consecutively make some pretty big demands. In order, Article 3 says that neither party can take actions affecting the, quote, core security interests of the other. Article 4 says the US should, quote, take steps to prevent eastward expansion of NATO and not have any military relations with former Soviet states. Articles 5 and 6 say that neither party can deploy heavy bombers, surface warships, or missiles outside their national territories from where they can attack the other party. And Article 7 says that neither party can deploy nuclear weapons outside of their national territories. All of these demands would require a complete restructuring of the American military order. Given how widely Putin considers Russia's core security interests, they include, for example, the Arctic, Article 3 precludes basically any military deployment. Article 4 would require the US to essentially U-turn on all its NATO allies and violate NATO's open door policy, which we'll get onto in a second. Article 5 is just unrealistic. Both Russia and the US love flaunting their military might outside their own territorial waters, while Article 6 would in practice ban the US from deploying missiles in Europe while leaving Russia free to deploy similar missiles against NATO countries.
Yeah, that's the problem because Russia's right on Europe, so they have a massive bias in their favor in that regard. So that's way too unreasonable in that regard. Maybe.
Absolutely.
Let's see, deploy, launch. Okay, shorter range missiles, stuff like that. We had that with the INF before America violated and both America and Russia got out of it, and that was one of the considerations with this stuff going on, and maybe try and bring it back. So that's some of a possibility, but have like no like defenses whatsoever in Europe for America and NATO, no, that's way too far.
To be fair to Putin, Article 7 isn't a terrible idea. And Biden has expressed an interest in restarting a dialogue with Russia about nuclear disarmament.
There we go, that's what I'm talking
but
about.
It should realistically be included in a separate negotiation specifically about nuclear weapons. It's also a pretty tall order, given that the US currently has 5 nukes in 5 countries around the world, and an agreement with Japan allowing transit of nuclear-armed vessels, while Russia doesn't have any foreign nuclear weapons. So, you get the point. A pretty tall order. On to the NATO one. Again, there are some niceties at the start, and then it all kicks off with Articles 4 through 7. Again, in order, Article 4 says that NATO cannot deploy any forces or weapons in countries that joined NATO after the 27th of May 1997. Article 5 says that neither party can deploy missiles in range of each other. Article 6 says that NATO cannot enlarge any further, and Article 7 says that NATO forces cannot conduct any military activity in Ukraine, or within a yet-to-be-agreed buffer zone between Russia and NATO. Again, these are some seriously tall orders. Let's start with Article 4. 27th of May 1997 was when the Founding Act on Mutual Relations, Cooperation and Security between NATO and the Russian Federation was signed by Boris Yeltsin, Bill Clinton and the 15 members of NATO. The agreement states that, quote, in the current and foreseeable security environment, NATO will refrain from permanent stationing of substantial combat forces in new members' territories, and Russia will, quote, exercise similar restraint. And, well, from 1997 until 2014, NATO stuck by this. But then, with Russia's illegal annexation of Crimea, the security environment changed, and NATO started deploying relatively small, multinational battle groups in the Baltic states, and Poland on a rotating basis. This isn't inconsistent with NATO's treaty commitment because, well, the security environment has changed, and NATO is now within its right to defend its members with additional deployments. It's also worth noting that a return to the state of affairs in 1997 would entail Russia withdrawing its forces from Abkhazia, South Ossetia, Crimea, and Donbass.
Joke's on them. If the West was smart, they would use it right back on them and watch Russia refuse all of a sudden. So yeah. Yep. Use that against them and show how silly they are. Now, NATO should not have expanded after the Cold War, but unfortunately they did. They shouldn't expand anymore, like don't bring Ukraine in or anyone else, but keep everyone else in because I do think as long as like the Baltic states and everyone else is part of NATO, Russia will not ever bother with them because they know what will happen. But no more expansion just to not cause any conflict. And what was the other thing?
Which unsurprisingly isn't mentioned in the draft text. Article 5 banning intermediate-range missile deployments within range of another isn't a bad idea, but it's worth noting that the Soviet Union signed up to a similar commitment in 1987 with the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, which Putin then unilaterally violated in...
That is incorrect. It was America that did that.
2017 with the development and deployment of the 9M729 intermediate-range missile. Again, this doesn't mean Article 5 is a bad idea. It's just that it's a big ask given Putin's track record on similar commitments.
America's the one who violated you, lying sight. Come on.
On the other hand, is pretty ridiculous. Similar commitments. Article 6, on the other hand, is pretty ridiculous. It would violate states' basic right to form their own security partnerships and require a reversal of NATO's open door policy, codified in Article 10 of its founding treaty. Any rewriting of the North Atlantic Treaty would also formally require consensus among its 30 states, which is completely unfathomable. Article 7, again, is pretty far out. Banning NATO activity in Ukraine might be an idea, given that Ukraine isn't a NATO member, but banning NATO activity in Eastern Europe, which includes at a minimum Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria, all of whom are NATO members, is a very tall order. Now, this isn't...
That's some things maybe, like Kyle mentioned, like maybe not have military exercises, which we've done multiple, like in Poland and the Baltic states. Maybe not do that. Not have, like, missiles in Eastern Europe and stuff like that. Some of that is reasonable.
To say that this idea hasn't got mileage, putting some sort of restriction on military activity near Russia might not be a bad idea, but this would require further negotiation. Putin's demands are well beyond what either NATO or the US would consider acceptable, and the Kremlin presumably knows this, which means they're one of two things. Either they're a maximalist negotiating position, this is Putin's opening offer, and he expects to end up with less, or they're just a mechanism for justifying an invasion of Ukraine and shifting the blame onto the West.
That's what Austria-Hungary did to Serbia, remember, in World War I.
NATO and the US to say no, and plans on using that to say,
Germany in the back.
Tried to negotiate, but the West left me with no choice. And to be honest, it's hard to tell which one it is. On the one hand, Putin has accepted Biden's offer and agreed to negotiate with all parties involved, which suggests it's a maximalist negotiating position. He's got bilateral US-Russia talks with Biden in Geneva Sunday and Monday, then talks with NATO in Brussels Tuesday and Wednesday, then OSCE talks in Vienna on Thursday. And this was back in January. On the other hand, Russia's deputy foreign minister insisted that the proposals were not up for negotiation and that they were a package deal. You couldn't have one without the other. So anyway, what do you think? Does Putin really want a negotiation, or is he just play acting? And are these proposals even workable as a starting position for negotiations, or are they just far too beyond the pale? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, be sure...
Alright, so that was interesting to see about that. So let's see what we think about that. Let's see, no military exercises in Eastern Europe, which you agree to, right?
In Ukraine?
Try bring back like the IMF and all that. Yeah, stop NATO expansion. That we agree with. I'm trying to remember other things, but other than that, that's probably it. The rest of them are like way too lopsided for Russia. And like I said, I think if NATO did go back to the original borders of 1997, I think Russia would just eventually invade.
So then slam into minimum Ukraine, Baltic states, annex Belarus, and they might even go for Georgia.
And who knows, maybe they'll try to go for the Eastern puppets they had during the Cold War. But that was an interesting video. So now, I think we've talked enough about Ukraine now. So now, let's get into something else.
How to deal with Biden honestly.
Alright, so this is the topic that you wanted to bring up. So, start talking.
Yes. Because there seems to be three different things when it comes to Joe Biden. There's basically your doorknobs who are like, you can never give Joe Biden credit on anything ever, and even if he does anything you agree with, you attack it. Then there's those like Bosch and Kyle who are giving out too much credit, and it's like you've got to find a happy medium.
And what was the third one you said? It was free, you said.
There's a couple that are trying to find some balance, but can't seem to find it.
Yeah, we actually talked about this in a previous episode when we talked about Biden's stuff in like the first year. You gotta be nuanced, because there are times where he needs to be shit on, there are times he needs to get praised. Just like we keep saying about the squad. It's nuance. Which apparently too many people can't seem to realize. I think Kyle's probably on the lesser problems in that regard, but like Vosh and Dor, they're the exact opposites extreme.
Yeah. Vosh gives pretty much nothing but praise, and Dor gives literally nothing but criticism.
Yep. Dude, freaking Vosh defended Biden doing child separation policy still, remember? And he shat on Trump for doing it. Like, dude.
It shows that despite being a socialist, Bosch is also a partisan idiot.
Yep.
That's why I don't watch him anymore.
Same here. So yeah, like, what do you think people are too hard on, and what do you think people are too soft on them on, for example?
Okay. When it comes to too hard, a lot of people, and this one where there are people that are pretty good, But a lot of people are way too hard on Biden on Afghanistan.
Yes.
But 90% of both sides refuse to give him credit on anything.
And guess who did? Us.
Yes.
That was like one of the best.
Credit, even if he still hasn't pulled out. He's just going to pull out the other base areas, which he won't because of the media backlash. But he did pull out of Afghanistan. Apparently, he's drawn down a bit in Iraq.
Yeah, we covered that.
He's drawn down a bit in. What was it? I think he drew down a bit in Somalia as well, and then he went back up to the original thing or something, or a little bit less. But that was about it.
Yeah, and oh my God, people are actually blaming the Afghanistan withdrawal for Russia being aggressive to Ukraine because of American weakness.
What?
Yep, I've actually seen people online say that.
Since bloody 2014.
Oh my God, that was awesome. All right, so yeah, that's one thing where people are way too hard on him and he did the right thing. Now, what about him? People being too.
Now, people are too soft on him. You got any?
Like with the Build Back Better thing for one.
Yeah, Build Back Better. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Build Back Better, more like Build Down Worse.
Like, Biden had way more power to pressure Manchin and Sinema and others to do the right things, and he freaking didn't. And a lot of people, like...
Oh, there's something else as well, where they're attacking the squad instead of attacking... they're attacking Biden.
Yeah. Because that's one thing they both failed immensely on. So, yeah they're...
Remember, one of the two, I think it was the Build Back Better or the reconciliation bill, where the squad voted against it. So 13 Republicans decided to go right-wing, to go fucking Jimmy Dore and vote for Build Back Better to own them.
Yep. So yeah,
if Jimmy Dore and the other doorknobs were in Congress and the squad voted against a bill, would they just vote for it to spite them?
Yes, just like I
think Hinkle doing that.
Yeah, just like I think Vosh would do the exact same thing. Like, I really do think, like I said before, like if Dorn...
Could you freaking imagine if Dore
did like a...
Dore and Bush were in the fucking Congress? It'd be possible make it a conscious thing to vote the opposite on every single bloody thing.
Yep. Like I said before, I really do think like if Dore and other people like him did like something simple, like something like pro-gay rights, I really think Vosh would vote against it because fuck Dore. He's admitted like before he was against forced to vote because Dore was for it. He admitted he wants Julian Assange to die, be tortured because he wants to piss off people that defend him.
Dore flop on might be I think actually no, I think oh my god, I think I just thought of something. Dore and Vosh, in an attempt to out-own the other, both came out against Medicare for all.
Yeah, I can see that. God, that is how sad and pathetic those two are. It's embarrassing.
Yeah. It's like, jeez. Or I think with Dore, he backed away because he wanted to keep defending Tulsi, and then he kind of drifted back. That's about when Bush drifted away to own Dore.
Yep.
And then Bush supported. Dore went back to own him. Then Bush fell for Dore's trap and went back, pulled away. Then the pandemic, Bush went back, so Dore pulled back. It's like that. And then Bosch pulled back for some reason as well, and now suddenly they're both on the same side.
Oh my God, this is embarrassing. So, yeah.
Just those two are. More so Forge, because he's so open about his despising of Dor versus Dor's despising of Bosch. But, yes, one of those things.
Yeah, so yeah, as we talked about before, when it comes to buying the squad, and anyone too for that matter, you got to have nuances. Sometimes they're bad, sometimes they're good. Just like there are times where Vosh is good, Vosh is bad. There are times where Dor is good and Vosh is bad, and Dor is good and Dor is bad. We'll
get into the Shitlib and Doreknob views later on this episode.
Yep. So I think we've talked about. Ooh, do you maybe want to get into that since we're talking about them right now?
Wow. You might as well get on to defining Shitlib and Doreknob views.
Oh, Harry would probably be triggered if you talk about this.
He will be. He will be. Yeah, well, he doesn't watch the show anymore, so he thinks we're all Shitlib naive supporters of Shitlib.
All right, so you brought it up. So what do you say?
Okay, so what we're going to do at this point is give proper definitions for Shitlib and Doreknob, because both of them, because Shitlib is being abused by the Doreknobs to mean literal. And anybody who disagrees with Jimmy Dore,
like Harry does to us,
and then basically Doreknob is mainly used by Borschites. They're to a degree of Sam Cedar fans as well, after his train wreck debate, train wreck that is called a debate with Hinkle. And they abused Doreknob a bit to basically be whatever, just about lobbing any criticism of AFC and the squad in with the Doreknobs.
How would you feel that I've been called both things online?
Fine.
Yep. and that's the funny thing. We criticize both.
Mm-hmm.
I would love
the same thing. We've got in Ukraine stuff. Honestly, we went after both Dor and Ford.
Yeah. So, I would love to see where would you call the doorknob from? I want to hear this one. That sounds funny.
Okay, so I was on. Would it be any surprise to you that I was called a doorknob on a Vosh video?
No.
It was the it was that train wreck debate with Hinkle on Syria. Where I said, I gave it what I think happened, where, there were a couple of canisters dropped by a sub. They went through the door of the house, but they landed on the bed, and on the beds, and so did only at most partially activated. And there was only, like, have you been to a swimming pool, when, public swimming pool, when they've just been recently chlorinated, and you get that smell of chlorine?
Yes.
But it's not, like, dangerous to you or anything? That's what I think. It was just enough got out that's what they smelled. They thought it was another gas tank, ran out, and were blown out by the artillery instead.
And you were called.
I pointed out that he was partially right. There was a report, a whistleblower report, fairly recently that called out. And I had 2 Borschites call me a doorknob for that.
That was great. And that was a train wreck too when Bosch rage quitted it.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, like, sort of understand it because he was a very frustrating person to argue with. And I could honestly compare him to Ben Shapiro in terms of his debate style.
Who?
Which is just Hinkle.
Yeah, I could see that somewhat.
Gish Gallop. Soft and hard, but he can't respond to everything else.
Yes. So, I would say a doorknob is someone who defends door all the time.
Overly defends door, who overly criticizes the squad. Again, and you can say with Shitlib, the one is who doesn't criticize the squad enough or overly defends them.
Yeah, so doorknobs are people I would say that fervently like defend door no matter what, act like him, like Harry does, and attack like Biden, the squad, and everyone if they don't do like everything perfectly. And then
also give like this one's where you get the degrees of doorknob and that when it's also how much they give a free pass to Republicans and just refuse to criticize them.
Yep.
Now, this one we give a little bit of a free pass because he groups the Republicans in with the corporate Democrat.
Who?
There's 1 point there, but that's about it. He's still a massive doorknob.
Who is?
Harry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's definitely in doorknob category. And then people like Vosh, he's definitely a shitlib. That is
absolutely. He's definitely. I could agree he's a shitlib.
I think somewhat.
You get into the degrees of doorknob and shitlib, where particular takes can be shitlibby or doorknobby. On that count, Hannah and Jake,
Hannah and Jake
can be a shitlib to a degree. And then can be time to time. Kyle, I think, can be a bit of a can be a bit of a doorknob at times, to a degree.
And did you say Sam Cedar?
Sam Cedar, yeah, he can be a little bit. He can be a bit shitlibby from time to time.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say too.
Like with again, you can do with two varying degrees.
Yeah.
Like I'd say, Jake can be Surfs can be more shitlibby. Hannah and Jake can be a little more shitlibby.
Yep.
As I said a bit earlier, to a degree, Sam Cedar and the majority report can be a bit shitlibby at times. Then on the other side, you get Zach Kyle, who can be a little bit doorknobby at times. I don't know. What else is there that could also be a bit doorknobby at times?
I was gonna say like TYT's very shitlibby.
Yes, they're more. I wouldn't say they're probably in terms of the major ones. They're probably between Sam Cedar and Vorsh in shitlibby.
Yeah.
Like Sam's a little shitlibby. Vorsh is 100% a shitlib, and TYT is about 50%.
Yep. David Pack.
50 to 60% for TYT, 40% for Jake, 70% for Surfs, and then Sam's about 25%.
Dave Packman's shitlib too.
Yep, he's about 80%. He's close to Vorsh.
Yep. Destiny's a shitlib.
Destiny's as bad as Vorsh, honestly.
Yep. Just like
if not worse than Vorsh.
Plus, he fervently hates Kyle immensely, remember?
In terms of doorknob, Kyle's about, when he said doorknob, I'd say Crystal, I'm going to say is a bit more. Crystal's a bit more doorknobby, about 40%. You ever heard of Nick Cruz? Revolutionary Belt Blackout?
That name sounds familiar.
Yeah, I'd say he's probably about 70% knob. And then Door and Hinkle are 100% doorknobs.
The only other person I can think of, but his name won't come to my head. Oh! What's his name? He's black. He goes like Mikasa Sukasa channel. His name won't come to my head though for some reason.
Vietnamese guy. Vietnamese guy who's Vietnamese guy?
No, this guy was black. And he debated Vosh before, but his name won't come to my... Oh! Nico House! There we go.
Nico Trap House. Where would they go?
The
Shitlib or Doreknob?
I don't watch them, and so I don't know.
Literally.
Maybe. Well, since Vosh hates them, I guess they're probably more in the Doreknob camp in his side, in his eyes.
Yeah, Nico Trap House, I think it is for them.
All right, so yeah, don't be a Shitlib and don't be a Doreknob. With you people. But of course, we're called all those things, which is funny enough. Both of you guys suck in a lot of ways. Yep. So yeah, both of you guys suck in a lot of ways, and you're both wrong on like both things, and depending on the circumstances. It's pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
Maybe, like all of you that hate Dor, you need to be more like Vlog here, who actually gives him credit when he says something right, which you never will do. Yeah. Like force to vote, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
All
right. Maybe not quite on M for A, but the more general concept of forcing a vote is good. If you can get something like... If you get something where you can really... I'll give you one. You think they could have... Like, the squad, I suspect, actually, FT tried to attempt to force the vote on conciliation, I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah, they tried it, and they got blocked out by the Republicans.
Yep, you gotta try. But the smug dismissal of them to say no, and of course you had Vosh, who only was against it because Dor was supported. That's pathetic. All right.
He talked about and exposed himself as basically the Shitlib to Dor's Doreknob.
Yep. All right. So now let's get on to the next video or topic.
Candice Owens menstruating.
Okay, this is gonna be very funny. Let's make fun of Candice Owens again. So, guess what she's crying about now?
Okay, that would be Minnie Mouse.
Wearing pants for like an occasion. Oh my god!
Wearing pants a lot.
Oh my god, this is gonna be great and full of hypocrisy too. So let's watch the stupidity. Oh yeah, now we're about to watch a Mike's video. What would you rank Mike on the Shitlib Doreknob category?
I have not seen enough of Mike Figueroa. Probably a little bit shitlibby. Where he's kind of drifted a little bit shitlibby and a little bit doorknobby.
Because he did actually support. He criticized his Dor, but his big ass video about criticizing Dor, he actually did what you did: support forced to vote.
He did what? I missed that.
In his one big video about Dor, he actually did say he supported forced to vote.
So
it sounds
probably the nuanced one.
Yeah.
Well, the new conservative outrage bait just dropped, and I'm enthusiastically anticipating months and months of wall-to-wall coverage over this specific change to a beloved cartoon character. Now, we'll talk about the character in question, which changed, but I've just got to say, I actually do feel a little bit bad for conservatives. I mean, imagine feeling this angry over your favorite cartoon character having their outfit changed temporarily. Imagine actually being apoplectic at the sight of a change to a cartoon character. I mean, these are very insignificant things that don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but they get deeply outraged. And this in particular made Candice Owens very angry to the point where she thinks that they're trying to destroy the fabric of society with this. So we'll get to that, but first, let's talk about the change to the cartoon character. So NBC News explains on Tuesday, Disneyland Paris announced Minnie was temporarily ditching her iconic red and white polka dot dress in honor of Disneyland Paris's 30th anniversary.
Remember, temporarily. Temporarily!
Oh no. She will also wear it in honor of Women's History Month this March. Minnie will instead sport a navy blue pantsuit with black polka dots and her signature bow created by British fashion designer Stella McCartney. So a change to Minnie's outfit, a temporary change to Minnie's outfit is why conservatives are once again up in arms. So let's go ahead and take a look before we talk about what they say about this. Okay, so I actually do think that this is an incredibly ugly design. I'm getting Hillary Clinton vibes from this. I think that the black polka dots and the bow ties are just hideous. Also, the lack of shoulder pads, in my opinion, is problematic. But I'm not necessarily the biggest fashion expert, so who knows?
Or you could be like me and just don't care.
I hate it. But at the end of the day, you can literally smear feces on Minnie Mouse's face and make that change permanent. I still wouldn't care or feel any sense of outrage over it because this is a cartoon character and it doesn't matter. So let's watch Jesse Waters and Candace Owens on Fox News explain why this is serious and what the designers of this change are trying to do. They're trying to destroy the fabrics of society. She's going to say this, and it's still shocking that she would take it this far, but let's watch.
Disney is putting Minnie Mouse in a pantsuit. That's right. They're getting rid of the skirt, and this is Disney Paris or something like that. And I thought, who better to ask about this than Candace Owens? Your reaction. Why are they doing this?
Oh, I'm just so glad. I'm so glad they're doing this. Let me just tell you.
It's the grifting. What would be the black woman count? No, the black count for the female counterpart will be Auntie Candice.
Jesse, it goes back to like when they did this with the M&Ms and now they're making her more masculine, and I'm glad that they're now realizing that this needed to be addressed. You know, all of us were traumatized when we saw Minnie Mouse and she was looking like a female as we were growing up. I mean, look, this is why people don't take these people seriously. They're taking all of these things that nobody was offended by, and like they have to get rid of them and destroy them because they're bored. You know, they're absolutely bored. They're trying to destroy fabrics of our society, pretending that there's issues, so everybody looks over.
Candace, do you see what you're wearing right now? You're wearing a pantsuit! Dude!
I'm wearing pants!
Dude! Candace! You're making a big deal because of a character getting designed saying it's ruining the fabric of society, yet you're doing it right now! Dude! How do you not see that? Are you this stupid? Like, what is wrong with you?
It's Grifter, remember.
I know.
She was
an SJW. I know that.
Yeah, she was an SJW. And then she switched to Grifter.
Keep grifting for Blexit, which is going to fail immensely.
Immensely.
Oh my god, Candace, you're so fucking stupid. If you're going to make a big... First off, why are you making a big deal about a character getting redesigned? Even if you don't like it, it's not the end of the world, for crying out loud, like you act like. Breaking the fabric of society. And also, if it is such a big deal to you, why are you having a double standard where you're wearing pantsuits and that's A-okay? Like, come on. If you're so against women wearing, like, pantsuits, then don't wear them yourself either, you idiot. For fuck's sake. If women want to wear pants, go ahead. If men want to wear dresses, go ahead. Who cares? Jesus Christ, you're stupid.
Here, look at Minnie Mouse. Don't look at inflation, Jesse. Look at Minnie Mouse with the world.
The irony that you're complaining that the left is using culture war stuff to deflate on issues when you're literally doing that right now.
Let's go forward because you've got her in a pantsuit. Never mind that you can't get anything at the grocery store and you can't buy a piece of bacon unless you've got $30 in your pocket. At least we're addressing the real problem, which is Minnie Mouse.
Dude, it said it temporarily! Temporarily! Dude! And also, the inflation is because of COVID, you fucking idiot. Which, if you start...
price gouging.
Yep. So, if you want that to end, maybe you should, I don't know, get vaccinated. Encourage vaccination so we can end the pandemic, and then the supply chains will go back to normal. Fucking dumbass.
Hospitals, so that the pressure, so that we do more ICU beds. Because then when you do, guess what? You're going to take all the pressure off the health system, and guess what? Then you might actually be able to change pandemic to epidemic.
That's right. That's right. They're bored out of their minds. And they're just making...
And also, it was not about boredom. They said it was about, like, a 30th anniversary of whatever this thing they were doing it for. So there's a reason why they're doing it, you fucking idiot. I'm sure it's like a business transaction, too. So, hey, capitalism. I thought you guys like capitalism. Oh, wait, you don't like capitalism if you don't agree with it. Oh, I see. So you're hypocrites then.
Making it all uncomfortable for the rest of us. Thank you so much, Candace.
Did Jesse Waters really say he was uncomfortable with seeing women in a pantsuit, yet you're talking to Candace Owens who's wearing one right now?
He really is uncomfortable with that, just trying to hide it.
Oh my god.
She actually said they're trying to destroy fabrics of our society. How? By temporarily putting Minnie Mouse in a pantsuit.
Yeah.
Okay. You can tell that she just sounds exasperated because I feel like conservatives, they've kind of milked this cow, and you know, the cow's dry now. You've gotten outraged about Mr. Potato Head, Cat in the Hat, M&M's, all in the span of a year. I believe also another cartoon character that I'm forgetting about. Maybe something else. I don't know. Either way, I mean, they've beaten this horse, and it's thoroughly dead, and it's just, you know, they're trying to cultivate some sense of outrage, but I feel like even they don't actually care, and I'm certain that that's the case. You know, as much as I make fun of them for being angry over this, I don't think they actually care. I think that this is political theater, and I think that...
Well, when it comes to Candace, it definitely is because she's a confirmed grifter. That's definitely true.
They know that we're aware of it, but they just are doing what they have to do. Oh, this new character went woke, so I have to pretend to be outraged over it. Just, you don't have to. I mean, it's clear at this point that a lot of these changes, especially the M&M's ones, these are attempts to bait conservatives into being outraged so they can get publicity. I mean, what happened when Nike did an ad with Colin Kaepernick, and people, you know, in conservative circles were burning their sneakers? That didn't hurt Nike at all. In fact, all of this publicity is good for business. So I feel like, you know, they've got to know at some point that nobody cares about this. You can tell that they don't even care. But here's one thing that stood out to me. So there's this conspiratorial thinking with Candice. She said, look at Minnie Mouse, don't look at inflation. So this is kind of being used, this outfit change of a cartoon character for Disneyland in Paris. That's being used to assist an American political party. They thought, listen, we've got to try to find some way to help the Democrats in the midterms. They're going to get wiped out. Here's what we'll do. We will we'll redesign Minnie Mouse's clothes, and then nobody's going to even question inflation. Nobody's going to think about climate change. All of these political issues, they're going to forget about it. They're going to
focus on the culture war bullshit.
That sounds like a conservative that Mike just mentioned.
Yeah, but Build Back Better. Let's just let's put a pin on Minnie Mouse. That's the rainbow flag, and then voila, we help the Democrats. I mean, it's conspiratorial thinking that is dumb even by conspiratorial standards. I mean, does anyone think that a cartoon character having a change of clothes is a sufficient distraction for political issues taking place in a...
I mean, if you're a conservative, then yeah, it obviously is. Have we seen the last year or so all the crap they keep crying about?
Different country?
Yeah.
Just the thinking here doesn't make any sense to me. But look, I love this personally. I think that every single cartoon character needs to be...
Yeah, DK House is quite the... Yeah, I'm looking around it. Yeah, there's quite a bit for... They're quite the doorknob. So, yeah.
Yeah, and...
I'm looking around. I'm still... we've got Blumenthal on there. So, immediately that's started... who his whole thing is basically it's only imperialism if the West does it.
Well, anyways,
AOC trolled by Santa.
But anyways, the rest of the video was just. Anyways, the rest of the video was just Mike showing artwork he did of cartoon characters doing pro-progressive stuff. We don't really need to pay attention to that. That's pretty much the entire video. So what do you gotta say about Candace Owens having a period again about nothing?
Oh, that's no surprise.
God.
Really is no surprise. It's that's stupid shit that people there's a stupid war of culture war shit that really does just distract from real issues. And it's annoying. because that means we can't fight for the proper things.
But careful, your racists are pointing out to Candace, remember?
Doreknob versus Shitlib. Looking through the thing for Nico House and the NCSC network, they're pretty hard doorknobs.
Yeah, like I said.
Yeah, so you were right on that.
All right, so what do you want to talk about next of our last two topics?
All right, what do we got left here?
The bottom two.
We've actually got three. Pelosi running and lying.
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, my God. Damn. So, anyways, this is actually part of the failure of the squad. So, it was, I believe, in 2000 and... I think this actually involved the forced to vote thing. I think one of the concessions Pelosi said, and she agreed to this too, somewhere along the lines, that if she became Speaker of the House again, she would not run again in 2022. Like, this was going to be her last time. Well, unfortunately, she announced that she is running again and lying. So, time to watch Kyle's video.
Oh no. Nancy Pelosi, at age 81, has announced that she's going to do a re-election campaign.
Yep.
Oh, so tired, dog. I'm so tired. Now listen, I will say this. The issue is not that she's 81. That's not the issue. And I see a lot of people framing it like that. I don't agree with that. Because if Bernie Sanders announced a re-election campaign at age 92, I'd be like, hell yeah, dog. Go do you.
Reanimated corpse announced it.
Yep.
So the issue is not that she's 81. The issue is that she's Nancy Pelosi. And that she is one of the leaders of the Democratic Party, and she is the epitome of a corporate Democrat. She's a quintessential corporate Democrat. That's the problem.
You want to spit out the corporate, make a corporate Democrat machine and spit a person out? It would spit out an exact copy of Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, like, she needs to go so badly.
The reaction to this was interesting, though. It was very interesting to me because you would expect that, the left, of course, is unified in our, hatred of this because it's time to move on. We got to get past the new Democrat philosophy of triangulation, and we're half Republicans. That's why you should vote for us. We don't want that. We got to get past that. That's what Nancy Pelosi is the perfect example of. But I expected the corporatists to be like, rock on, we love this. Turns out, even a lot of the corporate Democrats are not on board. So this is a great example here. This is CNN.
Interesting what Kyle pointed out.
And Jake Tapper's show, and he's talking to Bakari Sellers.
And for all of you who don't know, Bakari Sellers is the person that ran against Pelosi in the general election in 2020, because California has it differently. Instead of it being like a Democrat versus Republican, in their primaries, they have whoever has the two highest votes run in instead. So you had Pelosi and Bakari Sellers running, two Democrats running. So please, Bakari, please run again next time, for crying out loud. Or Sadiq Buttar, whatever his name was. Please just run again and challenge her.
Bakari Sellers is definitely more aligned with the corporate wing of the Democratic Party.
Okay, then think of Sadiq Buttar then, okay.
Listen to his commentary, and then if you want to get a good chuckle, keep your eye on the face of the other guy in this conversation, because it made me laugh.
Bakari, speaking of congressional leadership, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi just literally a few minutes ago tweeted, quote, "While we have made progress, much more needs to be done to improve people's lives. This election is crucial. Nothing less is at stake than our democracy. But we don't agonize, we organize. I am running for re-election to Congress to deliver for the people and defend democracy."
As you weaken by being a piece of shit.
Unquote. She's turning 82 in March, the House Speaker, and when she won't... I guess when she last won the speakership last year for the fourth time, she promised that would be her last time. What do you think? Is it a mistake for her to run again, or is there really no one else who can do the job she can?
Well, she didn't say that she was going to run for speaker, I don't believe. I think she just announced she's running for re-election. I firmly believe that it's time for new leadership in the House Democratic Caucus. I think it's time for new leadership throughout the Democratic Party. Not only do we have to get younger, but we have to be more vibrant, and we have to have bigger and bolder ideas to bring in a new generation of voters. Now, I will also say in the same breath that Nancy Pelosi will go down in history as probably the greatest speaker of all time. Whether or not you're talking about ushering a country through COVID or passing Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act. So her legacy is already written, but there comes a time, whether or not you're Nancy Pelosi or whether or not you're, Tom Brady, that sometimes you have to hang up the cleats when it comes to, being leader of your particular party or leader of your organization. And I think she recognizes that. Part of being a great leader is knowing when it's time to turn the reins over.
Look, I'll be fair here. I don't know jack shit about the other speakers. I know one of them was like a pedophile, so all right, better than him. I'll give you that. But look, it's not just me, and I follow politics closely for a living. But I don't know the history of speakers of the House. So, but I'm willing to bet she's not the greatest of all time, because if this is the greatest of all time, then literally every single speaker in American history was an abysmal disaster bordering on flat-out evil. So, but I mean, that claim, come on. And what's his evidence of it? Well, she ushered us through COVID. Oh, really? How's that going? How's that going? 2,000 deaths a week still, 2 years into the pandemic? When you look at the actual COVID death rate, when you include not just the official COVID deaths, but what's called the excess deaths. So in other words, here's how many people would die in a normal year, here's how many more died during COVID that weren't technically COVID deaths, but probably are COVID deaths. When you include them, it's over 1 million COVID deaths already.
2,000 deaths from COVID in the US. They're still getting 2,000 deaths a day.
Although, to be fair, a lot of that is more due to idiot anti-vaxxers that refuse to get vaccinated and Republicans more than just Pelosi. But there's more she could do.
And he's like, she ushered us through COVID. Well, if this is success, what's failure? What would failure have been? 5 million deaths? I'm seriously asking. And then the other point is, well, there was Obamacare too. So let me get this straight. Democrats, with a supermajority, passed...
It's not Obamacare, it's Romney care.
A Republican reform, and that's success?
Romney.
I would categorize that as failure. That's what I would do. You got to remember, guys, you heard this 1,000 times from me, but I'm going to say it 1,000 more. Obamacare, the whole idea behind Obamacare is what's called an individual mandate system. An individual mandate system was birthed by the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing think tank, and it was their counter to national single-payer health care. They said, look, the left-wing idea is basically government takeover of at least health insurance, in some instances health care too. That's their idea. Our idea is keep the for-profit health insurance companies in control and just mandate that everybody has to buy health insurance. Just force people to buy health insurance on the so-called free market. That was Obamacare. You know who used to support this idea? Newt Gingrich, Chuck Grassley. Mitt Romney implemented a version of it in Massachusetts. Now, you can turn around and say, hey, man, it's better than nothing. Fair enough. I'll give you that. But better than nothing doesn't mean it's good or successful. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Not only did it not cover everybody in the country, also the second Republicans got control, they destroyed it in 1,000 ways, so it doesn't stand the test of time. Like bold universal programs generally do. Like Medicare, for example. People, try to, they want to, Republicans want to destroy those programs. They've had a hard time. Why? Because they're universal in nature. It's harder to destroy a universal program because then everybody loses access to the benefits of it. So, greatest speaker of all time. My ass cheeks, greatest speaker of all time. Are you shitting my dick? Greatest speaker of all time. But I will say, you heard what he said at the beginning there. What he said at the beginning is fair. He's like, look, all right, you had your run, wrap it up. I don't know why you're doing this. It's time to hang up the cleats. And again, I want to be clear, that's not the case because of her age. It's perfectly possible somebody 81 years old can be doing a good job. That's possible. The age has nothing to do with it. The problem is she is so tied to corporate interests, and she represents them over the people. And she's the embodiment of the degradation of the Democratic Party and the movement of the Democratic Party away from being a party of workers I mean, look, Democrats, before the DLC, they used to take most of their money from unions and teachers and lawyers. They didn't take corporate money, or they certainly didn't take much of it. And then it was Bill Clinton in that era that ushered in Democrats saying, why don't we just copy the Republicans and take corporate money too? And then as soon as they started doing that, what happened? The Democrats became much more right-wing. That's what Nancy Pelosi represents. That's what she represents. Which is why she either doesn't support bold universal reforms, or if she nominally does, what happens? Oh, would you look at that in the negotiation process? We had to drop all of the universal reforms, and we ended up back in our neoliberal original spot.
Yeah.
You see similar thing happening with Build Back Better. Do I trust her to fight for big, bold reforms? No, because she doesn't have a track record of delivering on them ever. Ever. So when you have even Bakari Sellers is saying, all right, dog, wrap it up. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? There's widespread agreement it's time for a new era. Now, I have no doubt that Bakari's version of a new era is like, let's have younger people who are perhaps more diverse, who embrace, to one extent or another, the philosophy of Nancy Pelosi. I would disagree with him on that, but I do agree it's time to move on past Nancy Pelosi. And also, look, I credit where credit is due, even though Bakari and I have a million disagreements with each other, obviously. He did support Nina Turner in that race when she was running for Congress. And there was the corporate Democrat, I forget her name now, but she ended up winning. But Bakari supported Nina. Now, I don't know if that's because there was like a personal relationship and they liked each other, so he ended up supporting her, or if there was some ideological angle to it. I don't know, but frankly, I don't care. At least he did the right thing on that front. His politics more generally, I don't agree with, and he's corporatist. But hey, I'm happy you supported Nina, so I will say that. Yeah, it's time. Nancy, you gotta go. You gotta go. Nobody on the left is happy about this. She has such an underwater approval rating. The other thing is, it really does hurt electorally to have Nancy Pelosi as one of the figureheads of your party. Because there is widespread hatred of her. I mean, I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but she's way underwater with her approval rating. Bernie might be the only Democrat.
Yeah, Pelosi's overwhelmingly hated by everyone, even among Democrats, so she is a liability to us. That's why she needs to go.
It's like a water approval rating right now. So she's not what we need. She's the exact opposite of what we need. And this geriatric leadership that's totally out of touch is part and parcel of the problem. Again, not because of their age, but because of their politics. So, for the love of God, no. Now, he says, well, she didn't say she's going to run for speaker, she's going to run for re-election, because she had previously promised, I'm done. No, if she runs for re-election, she's probably going to win, and she's probably going to be speaker again. So, that's that. Shahid Buttar should have won, but of course, the firing squads were turned on him, and the left ate itself, and it was divide and conquer that it worked. If he runs again, I hope he wins. It's a massive uphill battle, as he knows. Hopefully the left can organize itself strong enough where you make a better run against her and perhaps can dethrone her. Can't say it's not possible. There have been people in leadership positions who've been knocked out before. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez knocking out Joe Crowley. He was next in line to be speaker. That was phenomenal. Eric Cantor lost to David Bragg. Eric Cantor was one of the leaders of the Republican Party. He was beaten by like a fake populist right-winger. We know the formula. The formula is, dedication, organizing, charisma, but also populism. So it's possible to take her down, but it is an uphill battle, and I'm not going to lie to you guys about that. But it is a sad, sad day because, yet again, it's the old guard clinging onto power with every ounce of what's left of their might. Ever since Adpocalypse.
All right, so what do you have to say about this?
No fucking surprise. Of course she would. She loves power, and she'd literally try to reanimate her own dead corpse to run again and run for speaker.
Pelosi, for the love of God, don't run. Please lose the primary, or please lose to Shahid Buttar, whoever's a progressive run against you. So please, in your district in California, please vote whoever's against her. It's most likely guaranteed she's going to face a progressive. So vote for them, please. We have to get rid of her. She's terrible, and she's a liability to us on the left. She has to go.
Yep.
All right, so what to talk about next?
One is The second last one is the Brian Flores NFL lawsuit.
Okay, another NFL thing, so I could talk about this forever. So, you probably don't know anything about this. Brian Flores was a coach for the Dolphins from 2019 till this year, and he is suing them, the Giants, and the Broncos for, like, I don't know about outright racism, but, like, discrimination and all that crap. So, anyways, here's what he's accused him of. First off, he is accusing the Dolphins owner back in 2019. For all of you that might not remember, in 2019, the Dolphins were tanking. If any of you don't know what tanking is where teams on purpose play bad and lose so they can get better draft picks like the next year. And the 2019 Dolphins at the beginning of the year were definitely tanking. You don't lose 59-10 to the Ravens, 43-0 to the Patriots, and 31-6 to the Cowboys and trade away like all your good players without being tanking. It was so obvious they were tanking. He's accusing the owner of the Dolphins of paying him $100,000 for each game he lost if he did the tank on purpose. Which I would not be surprised if that's the case, because definitely teams tank all the time. Every league does that at some degree or another. And that would definitely be very, very, very bad by the NFL's view if that was actually true. Because the NFL, even though I'm sure deep down they know tanking happens, they want to keep that facade that it's not happened. So if that really did happen, they would be very, very angry. And I mean boiling mad. And he's also accusing the Giants and the Broncos too of violating like the principle of the Rooney Rule. So for all of you who don't know, since 2003, the NFL has a policy called the Rooney Rule where every team is required to interview at least one minority person to be a head coach. Now, unfortunately, a lot of teams do this, and of course, Brian Flores, if his accusations are true, he was the victim of. A lot of teams just interview a minority person just to fill that quota, not necessarily legitimately trying to hire him, if you get what I'm saying. So, he did an interview with the Giants to be their coach, and he got a text message from Bill Belichick, who's the coach of the Patriots, congratulating him on getting the job. However, he sent the text, if this is true, to the wrong Brian, because there is a coach that the Giants did hire recently that also has the same name, Brian, who is white. So he thinks the Giants already decided to hire this Brian person to be their coach. They just did the interview anyway, knowing that he was not going to actually get the job to like fill that quota, remember? Like already planned ahead. And he's accusing the Broncos in 2019 of doing pretty much the same thing when he tried to become their coach before he signed with the Dolphins. That when he went to their interview process, John Elway, who is their like main person running the team now, and their general manager, showed up to the interview like drunk, hungover, like not like taking it like very serious, like not taking it very seriously, if you get what I'm saying, like with the Giants one, to like fill the quota. And he thinks they already signed Vic Fangio to be their coach at the time, which they did, and he thinks that's why. So yeah, that's the whole rundown on it. Now, I don't think it's gonna get anywhere. I don't even know what could be fixed, because that's a problem with the NFL. Like, that's why they did the Rooney Rule. They're trying to get more minorities to be coaches and stuff. And ever since the Rooney Rule's been in place since 2003, in the 19 years since, the number of minority coaches since then has gone down since 2003. In fact, right now we only have 3 minority coaches.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, so it's obviously not working, and I don't really think there's much you can do about it, because, as I just talked about, they're not, a lot of teams are just not going to take it seriously. They're just going to interview you just to fill the quota, and that's it. So yeah, what do you guys say about this so far?
Jeez. Why am I not surprised?
Now, like we said, this is accusations.
Why am I not surprised?
So, like, I want to say, though, this is accusations. I don't want to say it's true or not, so let's not get that, like, conflated or anything. It's got to go for court. It's going to probably take months or years, too. Yeah. Now, so, what do you think about the basis of the claims?
Dunno. Maybe it's it sounds like it does may have some credibility. I don't know if it'd be enough to get it through, but
yeah, I do think there might have been some like I said, teams do that. So if that happened to him with the Giants and Broncos, I would not be surprised. The Dolphins one, I do not know about, but like I said, they were tanking. That was like the most obvious tank job I've ever seen in the NFL since I started watching them in 2009. It was like so blatantly obvious. Oh my god! And if that is the case that he was paid to tank, that not only would violate the NFL's like contract requirements about like sign bonuses and all that, it would look really bad on their part if they were caught tanking. So. Not much you could say about that, and I don't know what you could do about getting minority coaches in the league, other than, honestly, it really might have to come down to just don't do anything and just hope for it just naturally come as it does. Like we said, there's been more minority coaches in 2003 before the Rooney Rule than there are now, and that just happened naturally over time. Like that's probably the only thing you could think of. Alright, so that's a pretty short one. So let's now get into the final topic.
Protectionism 1, the free trade Shitlib 0.
Yeah, so Kyle did this awesome video recently, so let's go take a look at that.
Well, I'm very happy to tell you guys that for once I have some good news here on the show. Let me throw up these two articles for you. This is the first one from TechCrunch. GM to invest $7 billion into 4 factories as electric pickup truck battle heats up. $7 billion into 4 factories. That's phenomenal. USA Today. This is just the beginning, Biden says, as Intel plans $20 billion semiconductor complex in Ohio amid chip shortage.
Which would help me because of my computer problems with like my graphics card. So yeah, and that's also good too for climate change to get more electric vehicles out on the road.
So, explain what's happening here a little bit. You have the COVID pandemic brought about a supply chain crisis. We import so many things from other countries that we're completely dependent on, like PPE, for example, the protective gear for COVID. Now, we import like all that stuff. Well, the supply chain seizes up because of COVID, because other countries are having a lockdown or whatever. What are we supposed to do? Answer, we're screwed. You can't do anything. In the long run, you could do something. Bring back American manufacturing. Make anything we can make here, we should make here, because it's good to be self-sufficient and independent, but it's also good to give people jobs.
Exactly, Bosch and free traders and outsourcing supporters.
Yep. Anti-worker fascists. Start joking on the fascist part.
Protectionism.
Is for all the jobs to be, is for all the manufacturing to be done in China or in places which have slavery.
But if
and they're not like prison slavery like America, we're neutral. Like transatlantic slave trade style slavery.
But careful, you'll be called racist if you point out like I have before. And yes, I literally have been accused of being racist for supporting the protectionism. So yeah, this is
even though the people who are against protectionism are the racist ones, really, because it's all the minority communities that have their jobs taken first.
Yeah, their jobs are taken first. So yeah. This is something that even Victoria 2 illustrates very good. You must be self-sufficient as much as you can, so when shit like this happens, you will be much better off. Like, you never outsource your industry if you can keep it.
That's a wonderful thing. By the way, massive credit to Dylan Radigan, who looked at that problem and said, I'm going to make a PP factory here. And he did! And he did. He's one of a number of people who went in on making a PP factory here in the U.S. Beautiful. And by the way, look, keep it real. I trust the quality of the products made in a union shop or factory in the U.S. more than I trust one from somewhere overseas.
I do, and you know it's not going to be made like in a sweatshop or anything like that. And funny enough, Kyle was actually called racist by people in the comments for saying that.
Even though people who are pro-outsourcing are the ones who are being racist.
Jesus Christ, these people are stupid.
I just do.
Yep.
American made. I'm a big fan of American made. That's something that where me and people on the right have something in common. Now, oftentimes, Republican politicians say they like American made, but they never do policies that bring that back, so they're frauds. There's a lot of average Joe and Jane Republican voters who believe in American made. Well, so do I. So do I. Okay. So, for Intel, this is going to be the largest private sector investment in Ohio history. Quote, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to a shortage of semiconductor microchips, which power thousands of products such as cars, cell phones, appliances, gaming consoles, and medical devices. The shortage depleted vehicle inventory, producing global supply chain issues and increasing consumer prices on automobiles and other goods.
See, like we were talking about with inflation earlier. All this ties back to COVID, you fucking idiots. God damn.
The president also urged Congress to pass something called the Chips for America Act, which would provide $52 billion to incentivize future semiconductor investments. And then there's a Senate bill that's part of it called the United States Innovation and Competition Act, which would authorize more than $90 billion for research and manufacturing. Speaker Pelosi said that Democrats are going to introduce their version of that soon in the House. It should pass the House, by the way. So currently, 12% of the world's microchips are made in the U.S. In the 1990s, that number was 37%. So thank you to NAFTA and permanent normal trade relations with China and all these
so-called free trade deals. Hard hearing those numbers decline.
The whole point of them was the profits of the corporations.
Literally no job.
The American workers in the process. You can say that was a byproduct of it. Okay, fair enough. But that was the result of it. Well, you bring back...
And not only was it bad for America, it also made China stronger and made them a rival. So... And that was the argument. Oh, if we do free trade with China, there will be more integrated economy, and therefore they'll liberalize. Yeah, wrong. If anything, they become more authoritarian sense.
Manufacturing here in the U.S., and it's upsides across the board, man. So Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger said that this Ohio, quote, mega site is going to be like a small city. 2 semiconductor fabrication plants are going to be there. It eventually could involve 8 factories and $100 billion in investment over the next decade, including Intel and its suppliers and partners. Construction is expected to start this year, the first chips being produced by 2025. GM, for that one, there are going to be 4 manufacturing sites with plans to create 4,000 new jobs and retain another 1,000 in the state. The investment includes construction of a new battery cell plant in Lansing and the conversion of GM's assembly plant in Orion for production of the Chevy Silverado EV and the electric GMC Sierra. The latter will be GM's second assembly plant scheduled to build full-size electric pickups. So, keep it real. With just what's already been announced, this is American manufacturing is roaring back. That's what this is.
Hopefully.
And it is a wonderful thing. You're going to have a lot of jobs created as a result of this. Now, of course, you should always have a hint of skepticism here and just say, look, I'll believe it all when I see it.
Yeah.
And we also don't know all the specifics as to the deals that were made. How much in subsidies did they get from the Michigan government and the Ohio government, respectively, to do the microchip factory and the electric vehicle factories? I don't know the answer to that. But I will say this. I have no problem with spending money to get stuff like this in place. Because that's stuff that my tax money should go towards. I'm proud if my tax money goes towards that. I just don't want to go towards endless war, and I don't want to go towards Wall Street bailouts. But to create long-term, good-paying jobs in these places, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. So this is wonderful, man. This is wonderful. And if you were Joe Biden, and if you were the Democrats, well, here you go. Here's your midterm argument. Think about what Trump did. Trump lied about the carrier factory. I saved the jobs. It was supposed to be 600 jobs. Well, articles came out a year later, 2 years later, we're talking about how all the jobs ended up being outsourced anyway. So you got the worst of all worlds. You got the government stepping in and subsidizing these factories, and then the factories turn around and outsource the jobs anyway. So they rob the taxpayers and then screw the workers. Well, but he bragged as if he was doing something real. And at the beginning, everybody thought it was real, including me. And so he got a great round of press for it, and his approval rating was up at the time. Well, if I'm Joe Biden, if I'm the Democrats, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm bragging about. Look, American manufacturing is coming back under me. We're getting an Intel, microchip or semiconductor factory. We're getting a number of GM factories for electric vehicles. And if you vote for me, you're going to get more of this. This is what I'm going to do. That's what I would do if I was the Democrats, because it's the one decent thing that we've seen. Is the one decent piece of news. So more of this. This is what we want. This is all anybody really asks for. Maybe the only people against this are the anarcho-capitalists, the Ayn Rand-style libertarians.
Vosh.
But basically everybody else. I mean, your average Joe and Jane, Republican and Democrat, looks at this and goes, great, great. I think we should make anything here that we can make here. I think we should make here.
And just so you all know, America historically, and still is to this day, very self-sufficient. Like, we could build, like, almost everything, which is something that most countries do not have that luxury in.
And that has upsides across the board. And I wouldn't even mind if consumer prices go up a little bit, because, hey, you have to pay these workers better than you'd be paying somebody making pennies on the dollar overseas. Okay. Go ahead, poll people. Ask them. You got to pay 37 cents more for whatever consumer good. They'll be like, okay, is that supporting a nice union job here in the country? Great. Love it. So, I'm happy, guys, giving you some good news for once on this show. Hey, y'all, do me.
Yep, you got to always support your own industries first before trading it all out, for crying out loud. Always home,
absolutely.
Always nation first. Oh, Vosh got triggered here in nation first, because you know how much of a globalist he is in that regard.
Yeah. Globalizationists.
Yep.
Because remember, the globalist is an anti-Semitic dog whistle.
Yes, I know. So, what do you guys say about this?
Finally, manufacturing is coming back to America.
And needs to go everywhere else. Like, I'm looking at you, Nintendo. Start making your Switches and all your systems back in Japan like you used to, for example. Same goes for Sony. Same goes for Microsoft. Make your shit in America. Everything, like, consumer good or whatever that's produced in a nation should always at first be made in your nation. Help yourselves first, you idiots. Always be self-sufficient. And what do you guys say about Bosch and free traders are going to be seething when they hear this video?
Yes, that'll be funny.
Alright, so that's all the topics we have for this episode. We got a few more for next episode, which we cannot wait to get to. But we have to get going right now, so see you guys next time.